Good afternoon. It is 5:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Christopher Wray appearing before Congress yesterday. Here's one of those moments.
This is no time to mince words. The American people have lost faith in the FBI. All of our constituents are demanding that we get this situation under control, and we have to do that. That's our responsibility. This is not a political party issue, sir. This is about whether the very system of justice in our country can be trusted anymore. Without that, no republic can survive. See, the American people that we represent are losing count of the scandals that are mounting. The FBI has been involved. They've seen evidence that it's being used as a political tool of the Biden administration. They've seen counterterrorism resources being used against school parents, the homes of conservative political opponents being raided. They've seen conservative states being targeted over their election integrity laws, and conservative Catholics and pro-life citizens characterized as violent extremists. Just last month, as you know, former Special Counsel John Durham sat right in that seat and testified that the Justice Department and the FBI should never have launched the bogus Trump-Russia investigation. And his lengthy report reluctantly concluded that the FBI, quote, failed to uphold its mission of strict fidelity to the law. Just last week, NBC had a poll. Only 37% of registered voters now view the FBI positively. 35% have a negative view. In 2018, by comparison, 52% of the country had a positive view of the FBI. There's a serious decline in the people's faith, and it's on your watch, sir.
That's Congressman Mike Johnson reeling off the list of scandals at the FBI. Let's add one more to the list today, as the FBI couldn't detect either fingerprints or DNA on that cocaine bag he found at the White House. How convenient. Let's turn now to Kyle Seraphin. He's a former FBI agent. He's the host of the Kyle Seraphin Podcast, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, Kyle. Great to have you back with us, sir.
Thanks for having me back on, Vince. Good to be here.
What do you make of Christopher Wray's testimony? What stands out to you?
Chris Wray has one of two options, and probably both of them are true. Either he's lying, he's massively incompetent, or a combination of both, depending on the question. That was my big takeaway. He said things that we know are false, so the question is, why are they false? Mm-hmm. And we just have to guess. We have to speculate. That he's probably uninformed about some things, as he likes to claim that he's bubble wrapped, that he doesn't have visibility to certain things, that he has oversight of the FBI, but he doesn't lead the FBI. Those are kind of his words. I'm kind of parlaying that he doesn't lead part of it, but he did say that he has oversight only when he was talking to Brett Baier on Fox. So I don't know. It's really troubling. Like an FBI director who doesn't want to be transparent feels like his the oversight authority of Congress is actually never going to do anything. And, you know, he might be right, because so far we haven't seen any concrete actions that have changed his life or his story arc at all.
Let me give you an example of something where he asserted something that appears to be flatly untrue. Yesterday, Congressman Kevin Kiley asked Christopher Wray about the FBI's involvement in targeting parents at Merrick Garland's direction.
Do you believe that the Attorney General should apologize to parents who are the subject of that memorandum?
I'm not going to speak to that.
Will you apologize for the FBI's own role?
I think the FBI conducted itself the way it should here, which is that we've continued to follow our longstanding rules and have not changed anything in response to that memo.
And then we hear from people like FBI whistleblower Steve Friend that actually he was assigned to monitor school board meetings. He was sitting in parking lots writing down license plate numbers of parents who were attending those meetings, as Christopher Wray seemed to suggest that they weren't doing things like that.
100% correct. Yeah, and given the chance to trust what Chris Wray says versus Stephen Friend, I've seen Chris Wray say things that are either false or are incomplete, and I don't have that experience with Steve Friend, so that's really easy for me when it comes to the testimony. You know, the other thing is this. Should Merrick Garland apologize? I don't really care. Should he be impeached? Probably, for perjury, because he stated he wasn't going to be using counterterrorism resources, that he wouldn't be using Patriot Act tools to go after parents, and then I reported that seemed like a problem, since the FBI's counterterrorism director is the one who actually instituted that threat tag that we're familiar with now. And then add to the top of it that my buddy Garrett O'Boyle went public and shared that there were at least 23 investigations into parents using that threat tag, which is like a hashtag. It tags the information. He went public and brought that to Jim Jordan's office. So we know at the time that he was removed, there were at least 23 investigations that show that this is false. That's really troubling stuff. And if we're not going to act like a country that has laws, then we're just going to accept, I guess, this police state that we're sort of living in, where
yes,
the FBI director says what he wants, and so does the Attorney General.
Chris Wray seemed to suggest yesterday, and even emphasize, that he wasn't consulted ahead of Merrick Garland's decision to send out that memo. He says he urgently then, as soon as the memo came out, he says he urgently contacted the 52 field offices, or excuse me, 56 field offices across the FBI to alert them that they need to abide by the Constitution, that they can't be in the realm of criminalizing free speech. Why would an FBI director have to tell field offices that they need to abide by the Constitution?
It's CYA. It's pretty classic government stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, the FBI puts this caveat that says, remember, the FBI doesn't investigate First Amendment protected activities. They put it on everything they do when they're actually going to be investigating First Amendment protected activities. So what do you do with that? I mean, the guy says one thing, he has plausible deniability. This is sort of the MO, but I don't have any faith in what he says because he's either said things that are false or that he doesn't know what's going on within his own agency, either of which are significant problems.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter which one it is, to be honest with you. Like I said, it could be both.
There's also the censorship of the American public. We now have mountains of evidence that the FBI in particular, and certainly other government agencies, have been involved in soliciting censorship from big tech companies and then receiving it on a routine basis. It's an assembly line of censorship between the government and these big corporations. Yesterday, Christopher Wray kept on emphasizing, well, this is just a normal partnership. This is exactly what happens all the time. We're being very responsible. Give us your perspective, Kyle Seraphin, on this relationship between government, big tech, and the First Amendment.
So I know people have called it the censorship industrial complex. I like to refer to it sort of as the information industrial complex. You're taking people from the intelligence community who deal in information. That's their sort of stock and trade. And they're leaving government service where all the contracts are, and they're going to the private sector where all the money is. That's pretty much what's going on. We are seeing back and forth. There are a number of people. There are Twitter threads about this. There are people like Tracy Beans reporting on it. There's people like Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi. And I actually just got to see them today at Freedom Fest. And these guys are doing, really important work showing that this has been going on for a while. And it's not, you don't pay these people to come in and work at Twitter because they are the best at doing what they do. You pay them because they know where the contracts are being signed on the back end by the federal government, which is an awful lot of money. And why wouldn't it be like that? That's the way it works in every other industry. I mean, there is censorship. There's no doubt about it. There's been wink and nod meetings that have been going on between the FBI and big tech. I have friends who have explained to me on multiple occasions they have been in these things with companies like Google and Reddit and Facebook and so on. So they are happening in the back end, and they say things in this sort of like tongue-in-cheek way. It's like, well, we can't censor anybody, but you're a private company, elbow, elbow, nudge, nudge, and then they do. And so that we've seen the real world examples of this. Yes. And of course, now with the Twitter files and stuff, we see at least one example from a private company.
Now, I mean, as I understand it, or at least the way I was raised and I learned about the way the government interacts with the people, the government can't inflict punitive actions upon you unless due process is afforded to you and you are innocent until proven guilty. But instead, what seems to be happening here is the FBI is targeting various social media accounts and shutting down their ability to communicate without any sort of meaningful investigation or trial into whether or not those accounts had committed wrongdoing in the first place.
Well, they're trying to privately enforce terms of service that exist for a private company that have nothing to do with the federal government's interests. So that's a notable problem. If the FBI is flagging TOS type issues, I would be very concerned about that, because why are we spending federal dollars to enforce private rules? That's a big issue. But the second thing is people need to understand that some of the case law, and I think probably some of the actual the statute, has not really caught up to the technology as it exists right now. We have contractors that will go out there, forecast what they think the government might want or other companies might want, and they will gather information, whether it be from social media and so on. They will do exploitations of this, and they will offer it and sell it. Well, the government can come in and buy it. What the government could not get without a search warrant, they can actually now buy because it's available to the public. Now, most people could probably not afford it. But if that's the case, we have a situation where I don't think our laws are actually, or at least our decisions are being kept up with. And most of the people that are being violated by this stuff don't have the money to go out and legislate, or rather litigate it in a way that's going to get us case law that protects it. So yes. I don't know if you want Congress stepping up or what the answer is, but at some point in time, we're going to have to come to grips that technology moves faster than the law almost all the time.
Yeah, and there's a First Amendment, and regardless of what the technology looks like, it should be upheld. You've got let me just ask you, from your perspective as an FBI agent, when an FBI official, an agent, whoever, asks for something out of, say, a corporation or somebody who's in private industry, how intimidating is that to that person that they're interacting with an FBI agent? It's got to be pretty coercive to just have a request of that nature.
Generally, I would say yes. That actually probably works closer on the private citizen level. If I go knock on your house, those 3 letters, obviously now I'm a former or recovering FBI agent, but if you were to go knock on the house and you have those 3 letters across your chest, then that is in fact a very intimidating thing. And I think there is some coercion to it, simply just by nature of what the agency is and what it might mean for your future. That being said, most corporations historically have pushed back. They've been able to hold the line, and there's been a respect there. I think of instances where if we did not keep the documentation up on our national security letters, which are like secret subpoenas for national security cases, then they would in fact share that information with the client, because you would assume that a bank and a phone company and an internet company would look at their clients as being the people that they have, if not a fiduciary duty, at least a responsibility towards, because that's where they're generating their income and that's what their product is all about. But more and more, what I think we're seeing is some voluntary basis, and you're probably leading on to what happened with Bank of America. If the FBI said it, didn't produce any paperwork, and they came towards it, was it under this wink and nod policy? Was it because there was an ideology that was being supported by that private entity? That's also kind of concerning. But generally speaking, historically, you didn't have businesses cooperate because they just said, go get a subpoena. It's very easy to do. Get a search warrant if you need to. And then almost all of them have a portal to be able to access that stuff and send it on. They have a streamlined process because they're businesses. They're not the federal government. They actually do things efficiently.
Can I? Your name came up yesterday in the hearing, Kyle Seraphin, and I want to make sure to give you a chance to address it. I'm gonna play a clip first. This is the Democrat Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and let you respond to it if that's all right with you.
Absolutely.
All right. Here's Sheila Jackson Lee yesterday.
I have a document that is a tweet that is wanting to submit into the record. 2 of the Republican witnesses were gifted 255,000 checks, 255,000 in checks immediately after they testified before this committee. It seems to be quid pro quo, but the fact of the tweet that I'm submitting from Mr. Kyle Seraphin says the fact that Mr. Allen has not yet cashed a check is not that he did not receive the check. So I submit in the record the tweet from Mr. Seraphin, who indicated that 2 gentlemen, Garrett and Marcus, were receiving a check of
continuing your attack on whistleblowers without objection. Though,
can you explain, Kyle Seraphin, what's happening here for the rest of us?
Sure. Well, first of all, Sheila Jackson Lee is mispronouncing my name, which I'm sure is probably complicated to get the PH. It sounds like an F when you read it in English. My 4-year-old figured that out, but my 6-year-old, she's on the page. So anyway, she's got that trouble. She's kind of struggling there, but essentially she is saying in the least articulate way possible that I wrote a check to 2 men because I had a give, send, go that I opened up for Marcus Allen and for Garrett O'Boyle, who one is a former SOS in the FBI and the other is a former FBI agent. They're both indefinitely suspended. So I use that term former because that's what I think is going to happen to them. But the FBI considers them employees despite not paying them in over a year. So I went out on Give, Send, Go, and I created an account, and we publicized it, and we got some pretty good traction. And we had about 11,000 people in America open up their hearts and their wallets, and they, donations as small as $2, and the highest one was $5,000 for what it's worth. Not very many of those. We raised about $560,000 for these gentlemen and their families, so that they can continue to, keep the lights on and eat. Chris Wray was actually asked yesterday, how would you do if you didn't get a paycheck for 10 months? And he kind of laughed at it, which I think tells you a lot. No sense of empathy from that man. But what Sheila Jackson Lee is accusing me of, apparently, is buying testimony for these guys because I raised money for 2 people, one of whom I've never met. I've never met Marcus, but he seems like a good guy. And Garrett is a dear friend. And I want them to not starve, and I want their children to not starve because I think what the government has done to them is wrong because the government did the same thing to me, and it wasn't very fun for me. So that's what's going on. I wrote those checks. They did, in fact, tear them up because we had some tax liabilities if they actually cashed them. And we're actually in the process. I've got a lawyer doing it. We're making a 501c4 so that we can write them checks, so I'm not going to be on the hook for a 35% penalty or whatever the heck it is to pay the federal government taxes for money that they have no right to take.
So the money,
that's what's going on.
So you are still technically, I would assume, in control of the money for now.
It's all in my bank account. Yes, it is.
Okay, and so these guys never actually received any of it. The way the Democrats were talking about it yesterday, though, Kyle Seraphin, I have to believe that they're desperate to come after that cash.
Maybe so. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any possibility that they can really do anything with it. I guess they could come seize my bank account, but then they would have to admit that I didn't pay it to those guys yet. And so that would be problematic for what she said. here's the thing. People keep asking me if I'm going to go testify in front of Congress. And the answer is probably no. I don't really have a lot of interest in doing so. But if I do, the condition is going to be really simple. I'm more than happy to swear in and testify under oath in front of these committees, as long as the representatives do the same. If I'm going to be under penalty of perjury, I'd like to see that they are also under penalty of perjury, so we don't have all these false statements out there. And if they agree to it, then I'd be more than happy to come and set the record straight for them. I just don't think they have the courage of their conviction to do so.
All right. Kyle Seraphin, former FBI agent, also host of the Kyle Seraphin Podcast. Thanks as always, Kyle. Good to talk to you today, sir. There were some amusing moments yesterday with Chris Wray. Amusing in the sense that Chris Wray told the truth to some Democrats about things that they've been lying about for some time. Here's Democrat Congresswoman Deborah Ross saying that abortion facilities, the places where they kill babies, are under attack. They're under attack. And Chris Wray had to tell her, actually, it's not the abortion places that are being attacked by those extremists. I hate to tell you.
I should say, though, when you mention on the abortion side, reproductive facilities, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't also point out that there has been a pretty significant uptick in violence going the other way since the Dobbs decision. And in fact, most of the investigations that we've opened since the Dobbs decision, probably about 70% of them have been violence against pro-life facilities.
Are you allowed to say pro-life in the Biden administration? Are you allowed to use that phrase? That kind of stands out, doesn't it? So there's Chris Wray saying, actually, lots of violence against these pro-life facilities.
Probably about 70% of them have been violence against pro-life facilities. We recently had a significant charge in the Madison, Wisconsin area of a guy who was trying to firebomb a pro-life facility there.
Yeah, but those have been few and far between because you see, those attacks happen at night, says Merrick Garland. You just can't track down people when they do their evil deeds when the sun goes down. I had an old left-wing professor. She used to say that she'd walk in carrying her books. The lights would be out in the classroom because none of the students were animated enough to turn the lights on, including yours truly. We'd just sit down in our chairs, and she'd walk in, she'd flip the lights on, and she'd say, men love the dark. It is where they do their evil deeds. And I said, here we go. Here we go. Coming up, I've got more for you on the madness that is Washington, D.C., and Joe Biden tripped upstairs again. Good afternoon to you. It is 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Boy, a lot going on. We've been talking a bit about Christopher Wray's testimony yesterday before the United States Congress, the House Judiciary Committee. And today, the Judiciary Committee was apparently relitigating some of this. And kind of a particularly annoying Democrat called Congressman Steve Cohen from Tennessee began accusing his Republican colleagues of orchestrating a dog and pony show and being completely dishonest and attacking the good men and women of the FBI, and they've been subverting our democracy, and they're evil, and they're bad people. And Darrell Issa jumps in here, Republican from California, to say, wait a second, are you accusing us of a lack of integrity? And this kind of wild exchange ensues. Here's Steve Cohen today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Khan, thank you for being here and for putting up with some of the questions you have been asked. Yesterday, FBI Director Wray sat here for almost
It's amazing. The job is supposed to be government oversight. Instead, he's slobbering all over the witness from the government, the FTC guy.
5 hours and put up with continual questions attacking his patriotism, his judgment. It was really amazing, the hypocrisy that was shown. The issue was weaponization of the FBI. And yet, every member of this panel who was here on January 6, 2021.
Sorry if you're driving and your eyes just rolled off the road.
Knows that the government was weaponized on that day. As I said, nuclearized.
Nuclearized. You got that? In case you missed it. Go ahead and try and spell that.
Take over the government, to overthrow the government, in contradiction of the oath of office that each of us had taken. And that we've learned that certain members of this committee,
the party with the least respect for democracy in our country,
went and met with Donald Trump
The president?
And that they were participating in the overthrow of our government, the nuclearization/weaponization of...
So what was the overthrow of our government? Do you remember the overthrow of our government? When did that occur? Exactly. If you could give me a date, time, that'd be good. I'd love to go back and look at some news stories on that. The overthrow of the government? Are you talking... I just want to make sure, because I'm pretty sure you could not be this stupid. You're not talking about when the Viking guy was standing on the Senate dais, right? That's not what you're talking about, because I'm fairly certain the government was overthrown. You're not talking about when Donald Trump left the White House on Inauguration Day and went to his plush home in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. You know that's not what you're talking about, are you? The peaceful transfer of power? You're not talking about that? The government was overthrown. It was nuclearized.
Trump. And that they were participating in the overthrow of our government, the nuclearization/weaponization of our government. And yet they had the chutzpah, the audacity, the lack of integrity, to question Wray's judgment, and went on and on. And I was sorry, I came in here today and I'm
Is the gentleman accusing us of a lack of integrity?
Mr. Chairman, if you would ask whoever it is to shut up.
I'm sure the chairman will rule when he comes back.
Today,
it's funny. I guess Jim Jordan, I think, stood up for a bathroom break or something. He was like, I don't need to be here for this. You know, Cohen's just going to run his suck for a couple minutes. It's not that important. It's not like there's going to be a back and forth. There aren't going to be any meaningful motions that I'm going to have to handle. So he ran off to the little boys' room. And at that moment, Cohen, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that whoever that is to shut up. Just shut up. He's nuclearizing the government and shut up. And Darrell Issa, always saying, are you accusing us of a lack of integrity here? And what we actually are witnessing is a lack of emotional continence on the part of Steve Cohen, who can't control himself. One little question is like, hey, are you accusing us of a lack of it? Shut up.
And went on and on. And I was sorry, I came in here today and
Is the gentleman accusing us of a lack of integrity?
Mr. Chairman, if you would ask whoever it is to shut up.
I'm sure the chairman will rule when he comes back.
I came in today and I heard some questions about your relationship with the Bar Association. Hey, you don't talk about rope and a house where a man's been hung.
What is he talking about? Okay, anyway, the point is these are not questions. This is just the world's least thought out speech. He's like, do you think what if he has like some responsible people on his staff like, sir, we prepared this for you, so you have something to nah, I don't need it. I'm just gonna get up there and accuse them of nuclearizing the government. What are you talking about? Don't ask him. Just let him talk. Shut up, he yells at Darrell Issa. All right, so that was happening today. There are other Democrats who are morons. Actually, I'm not certain that Dan Goldman is a complete moron, this guy from New York. He may just be evil. He is he's a slick guy. He's the heir to the Levi Strauss fortune, the gene company. He's got good genes, in other words. And he's got a lot of money. So he bought himself a house seat, as you do when you have a lot of money. And he was on MSNBC this week. In fact, yesterday he was on MSNBC on Morning Joe, and it was kind of an interesting exchange because they were asking him to dunk on the FBI whistleblowers, the Hunter Biden whistleblowers, the people who've been coming out of the woodwork and saying that Hunter Biden and the Biden family are as corrupt as hell. And the left is very excited this week that the Biden Justice Department has just announced fresh charges against a man called Gal Luft, a longtime Washington think tanker, who claims he's got the goods on Hunter Biden, that he knows exactly what the financial arrangements were because Gal Luft worked for the same Chinese company that Hunter Biden did, CEFC. So he had a front row seat to the way that this was all structured, says Gal. Gal is releasing videos from undisclosed locations because he's on the run from the Biden administration right now. Now, is Gal Luft a credible figure? You don't know. You just can't tell. But the reality is, of course, our government institutions, they don't have the credibility here. There's no reason you should reflexively trust these institutions, of course, given all of the abuses that they've meted out. But MSNBC is very excited that the Biden Justice Department is going after one of the Biden family's accusers. They love this. And so in the clip you're about to hear, this is Willie Geist over on Morning Joe inviting Democrat Congressman Dan Goldman to please attack Republicans. Please attack these Republicans. Please talk about what a bad person Gal Luft is and just how innocent the Bidens are as a result of all of this. And Dan Goldman happily obliges, but what he walks into is a trap of his own design. It's pretty amazing. Take a listen to this.
You and Congressman Jamie Raskin have written a letter to Congressman Comer, which reads in part, "We are concerned that an official committee of the House of Representatives has been manipulated by an apparent con man who, while a fugitive from justice, attempted to fortify his defense by laundering unfounded and potentially false allegations through Congress."
Now, remember, just to give you context that MSNBC is not giving you, he first made these allegations to the FBI directly in March of 2019, before any charges were ever leveled against him, well before. So the idea that this was a ploy, this was a way to take the heat off of him in the wake of charges is not true. That's deception.
It appears as if Mr. Luft sought whistleblower status from you in an effort to defend himself from criminal prosecution while a fugitive from justice. Worse yet, this latest episode also raises concerns that Mr. Luft may be manipulating your investigation not only for his own self-interest, but perhaps also in furtherance of the CCP's efforts to undermine U.S. security interests and the President of the United States.
Now, Gal Luft's connection to the CCP, the Communist Party in China, the Chinese Communist Party, is through CEFC. That's the Chinese energy company that was also paying Hunter Biden. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So the idea is like, oh, he could be compromised because he's getting that Chinese money. What? What kind of argument is this? And Dan Goldman, he falls for it.
Congressman, who is Gal Luft for our audience, and who is he not?
Yes. Please explain this story our audience has never heard before.
As James Comer and others have suggested he is.
Well, he's certainly not a legitimate whistleblower, and what he is an alleged con man, as we said in the letter, who brokered a weapons for oil deal between China and Iran multiple times, who was an unregistered agent advancing the interests of the CCP in the United States, and who, very importantly, is indicted on making false statements to the FBI.
Who was paying him? Who was paying him to advance the interests of the Chinese? Oh, it's the same company that was paying Hunter.
Including in the very meeting that he provided information about Hunter Biden to the FBI. So the remarkable situation that we're in now is that the key whistleblower, informant / witness.
Now, pay attention to something else that you hear happening in this clip. He says, Dan Goldman says he's the key whistleblower. The key whistleblower. In other words, pay no attention to the FD 1023 form that Congress just fought Christopher Wray to get access to, about the bribery scheme, laying out how the Bidens were making all this money. Pay no attention to all of the suspicious activity reports, all of the bank transfers to the Biden family, all of the suspicious payments that were sent to them. Pay no attention to that. Pay no attention to the on-the-record claims by Hunter Biden's business partner, Tony Bobulinski, who's come forward and said that the big guy is 1,000% Joe Biden. I was there. I met with Biden. I know how these deals were structured. Pay no attention to that. Pay no attention to Hunter Biden's laptop or any of the contents where you see things like 10% for the big guy. Pay no attention to that. Pay no attention to the IRS whistleblowers who've come out and said that the Biden family has been covered up for, and in particular Hunter Biden. Pay no attention to the fact that they've also said that Joe Biden, as in terms of a criminal investigation, in terms of an IRS investigation, was protected by people in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware. A woman called Leslie Wolf, the assistant U.S. attorney there, kept telling investigators, you're not to look into Dad. You are not to look into the big guy. Pay no attention to any of that. No. Now what is happening, in the words of Dan Goldman, which is channeling these are the talking points of the left, being channeled through the Levi Strauss air, which is Gal Luft is the only person who's ever made allegations. He's being pursued by the Justice Department. You can't trust him. This is all a lie. Do you see how they're structuring this? So now he's the star witness to all of this. To reiterate, I can't vouch for Gal Luft's credibility, but if him being on the take from CEFC makes him a criminal, what does that make Hunter Biden?
The remarkable situation that we're in now is that the key whistleblower, informant / witness in Chairman Comer's oversight investigation into the bogus allegations of the Biden crime family and all that is actually someone who has represented the interests of the CCP, has
just like Hunter Biden,
lied to the FBI, and is
just like Hunter Biden on a gun background check form,
fugitive from justice, who is literally running away from
Hunter gets to live in the White House. That's the difference in that scenario.
Accountability from the United States court system, and upon receiving that information, Chairman Comer, we would naturally think, would say, "Oh boy, let's hold back here. This guy has zero credibility."
So this guy's a total con artist, this Dan Goldman, and that's just more proof of it. More proof of it. So look, by implication here, Goldman is accidentally condemning Hunter Biden. Now, if you were to ask him about it, he'd just blow you off. He's not going to ever admit to what he just said on national television. But the concept applies. The concept obviously applies. Goldman condemning the House Oversight Committee over all of this for requesting testimony, literally just asking for testimony from Dr. Gal Luft. And then acting and saying that, Gal Luft is an illegitimate witness because he was indicted for acting as an unregistered agent of China. Meanwhile, the same company that paid Luft, CEFC China Energy, also paid Hunter Biden's businesses, you ready for the number? $5 million. So Hunter receives $5 million from this company. No foreign agent consideration. No violation of Foreign Agent Registration Act. No concern about foreign lobbying. And Gal Luft said this. The video that he released last week, the one that came to us through Miranda Devine at the New York Post, the one that came from an undisclosed location, he said, "You're going to charge me with a FARA violation, but not Hunter? Hunter's not being charged? You can't be serious." And yet they are. They're very serious. It's not hypocrisy. It's hierarchy. And you're on the outs, buddy. You're not in the club. We talk all the time about the state of our military and the requirement that it be competent and lethal. And I never thought I'd say this, but the Biden administration has been trying to make the military more lethal. They've been paying to have service members kill their babies. Isn't that amazing? Well, Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville does not like this. He's been blocking hundreds of military promotions, saying, "Stop using the military to kill babies, and then I'll allow the promotions." Joe Biden was asked about this today. Take a listen to his answer. CNN's Arlette Sains inverting what's going on.
And if I could also ask you something about happening back home. You're seeing the GOP grappling with tying abortion rights to defense issues.
Wrong. This is the left tying baby killing to defense issues. So Tuberville is reacting to the aggression by the Biden administration here. So CNN has perfectly inverted what's going on.
With tying abortion rights to defense issues, including a block on military promotions by Senator Tuberville. What does this say about U.S. military readiness? And would you be willing to talk with Tuberville to try to work out some solution?
Now, the background to this...
I'd be willing to talk to him if I thought there was any possibility of him changing this ridiculous position.
The background to this is that Tuberville says the White House refuses to talk to him. He's willing, he wants to break the logjam. The White House doesn't. They love this. They want to hang on to this dearly. The human sacrifice component, all the better.
Tuberville to try to work out some solution.
I'd be willing to talk to him if I thought there was any possibility of him changing this ridiculous position he has. He's jeopardizing U.S. security by what he's doing. I expect the Republican Party to stand up, and do something about it. They've within their power to do that.
It's so stupid. So the baby killing continues until Tuberville releases the promotions, and then it'll continue anyway? Is that the position he's taking? Meanwhile, we just got a vote here in the last half hour. The House voted moments ago to overturn this Pentagon policy guaranteeing so-called abortion access to service members, regardless of where they're stationed, says the New York Times. The vote, 221 to 213. It is the vote is imperiling the passage of the annual defense bill as right-wing lawmakers rallied Republicans. No. What you're watching is normal people trying to untangle taxpayer money used to kill babies. That's it. From the American military. Let's save some lives. How about that? As the left, once again, always on the attack. The great one, Mark Levin, up next here on WMAL.